I'm Bernard Ricks of Policing TV and Policing Insight. I'm delighted to welcome you to this second of a online series of AI and policing events put on by Policing Insight, Policing TV and CJS Events Solutions. I'm here in central Tirana in Albania, and it's an illustration of the worldwide impact that AI has, not just on policing, but also on so many other areas. I'm delighted to welcome you to this event. I'm also very grateful to the organisers from the teams that we've put together, and also grateful to the presenters that will be speaking to you today. So please enjoy the rest of this presentation. I do hope, I'm sure that you will enjoy it and find it informative.
Hello everyone, and thank you for listening to this webinar. My name is Ruth McAlister. I'm Head of Research and Intelligence at Harod Associates. And today I'm going to speak to you about artificial intelligence and in particular focus on the latest trends and developments. It of course goes without saying that whenever we talk about the latest trends and developments, the agenda for this session will be quite broad. So what I want to do is firstly really talk about what artificial intelligence is, and in particular why last year, so why 2023 was so important whenever it comes to AI. I'll also talk to you then about AI and imagery. I'll then talk to you about text or chatbots, as they're sometimes referred to. And then finally, within this section, I'll talk to you about AI and voice technology. And whilst I'm talking about the latest trends and developments throughout this presentation, there is a small section on the end that focuses on this too and kind of summarises what we have discussed so far. And of course, there will be time for questions and discussion towards the end. So before we really start with 2023, just to take you back quite a few years now, AI isn't new. That's one of the first things to really clarify for everyone. It's been around from the 1950s. And even if we think about AI in the recent past, you know, anyone who gets Netflix recommendations or anyone who has an Apple iPhone and maybe asks Siri some questions, that of course is artificial intelligence. What artificial intelligence is essentially technology that models systems of the human brain. That's what makes it so intelligent. And it's really quite versatile nowadays, and it operates across many fields, including healthcare, manufacturing, law, and policing. But what I noticed last year, particularly in 2023, is that many tools came onto the market really quite quietly, and it almost took a lot of people by surprise, where AI became something of a norm. It was very difficult to go to an event in 2023 or a conference, for example, and not have a session on AI. It really became synonymous in 2023, much more so than the previous year. AI-generated imagery is produced by machine learning models that have been trained on enormous data sets of existing images and also existing text. These are referred to as LLMs, or large language models. And of course, there can be some controversy in terms of how these models are trained. For example, is there bias built into them? And that can be one of the risk factors with AI, and it's certainly something that may come up within the questions at the end. So once these models have been trained, they use complex mathematical algorithms to learn from imagery. They recognize styles, content, and of course, even individual people. AI allegedly did reach the peak of inflated expectations in Gartner's 2023 AI hype cycle. This essentially looks at various technologies and the maturity of technologies through their life cycles. So the question is, will we see a plateau of productivity, around 2024. At the minute, I don't think we will, but certainly there's lots of change expected between now and the end of 2025. Thereafter, of course, there may be a plateau in terms of the technology that we see in relation to AI. So firstly, if we look at AI and imagery, then there are a growing list of AI text to image generators. I've only put a couple on the slides here. DALL-E 2, Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, and also Imagery. These models can be continuously refined and adjusted until it meets certain quality criteria demanded by the user. So if you look at the images on the screen, what you can see there is an example of Stable Diffusion. We have a cat in 2017, which really doesn't resemble anything in particular. You fast forward to a cat in 2022, and you can see it looks really quite sophisticated. DALL-E also has developed significantly in recent years. They also can build in anomalies to stop any of their images being altered by more nefarious users as well. And if you look at the bus on the end of the screen, that is a bus from Imagery. So it's brand new technology, and you can see the sophistication, if you like, that is displayed within that particular image. So if we look at Stability AI or Stable Diffusion's technology, this was first created in 2022, and it uses a process called diffusion, and essentially this will build up an image from noise. And again, you can see this depicted on the screen. So you can start with a random noise image. The model will then add more and more images and detail until a point where it almost becomes indistinguishable from a genuine image. And again, here is the example of the cat, as I have said. Stable Diffusion 3 was released in February of this year, and it's not available for the public to access just yet. You can pre-register to have a look at some of this technology. And essentially here, what we can see is mass development in terms of text description and how more significant and detailed these images have become. So with a few image prompts and word prompts, you can create amazing images through the Stable Diffusion technology. And they publicize this widely on their website. So you can pre-register to get some more information on this. But suffice to say, in terms of imagery and AI, it has come on leaps and bounds, in particular in the last 6 to 12 months. There are, of course, still problems with AI and images. One of them in particular, Google has paid very, very close attention to through their Imagery AI. We have an issue of AI-generated hands. I would say to anyone listening to this webinar, if you ever look at an AI image or you're trying to determine if an image is genuine or if it has been created by artificial intelligence, one of the key things to do is to look at the hands. Sometimes you will find there may be an extra digit or two, or just sometimes they don't look to be in proportion to the rest of the body. Google have tried to alter this and improve this through Imagery. And again, Imagery has been trained on a publicly available data set using millions and millions of images from the internet, which of course is hugely controversial as well, you know, in terms of gaining authorization and approval from various artists and owners of this particular content. So there are, like I say, there are criticisms around how these images too have been scraped, and whether or not, of course, there could be bias built into these. Google's Imagery isn't really advertised or marketed for the individual user. It's aimed mostly at businesses and developers. And all along, they have really tried to advertise in that way to keep it a more niche market area. What you're also seeing now is more research in this area, in particular trying to assess if the normal person on the street can distinguish between what is an AI image and what is a genuine image. Louis and colleagues took part in a a small research study with 50 participants. They looked at various different types of AI imagery, and Midjourney, for example, was one. They also looked at stable diffusion. They looked at women, men, plants, animals, objects, and essentially asked individuals if they could distinguish between what was a genuine landscape, for example, and what was an AI landscape, similarly for animals and objects. What we saw from that study was that 61% of participants correctly identified images that were generated with AI. While 61% may seem reasonably high, that also means that almost 40% of people couldn't distinguish, which I think is probably more significant. For real images, 70% correctly identified what the real images were. Really, this, of course, again, should be 100. So what we're now finding is that within the wider public, there's a bit of trust erosion and doubt creeping in about what is real and what, of course, is disingenuous. So that, of course, has wider implications for society as well. Interestingly, they also determined that it didn't matter on a person's age, their background, gender, any other kind of socio-demographic detail. That does not actually impact on a person's ability to distinguish between genuine images and AI-created images. In terms of imagery and criminality, one of the research areas that I work on is child sexual abuse material. And you can see through headlines from last year where paedophiles have been using AI to transform real photos. And of course, this has implications for sexual offending. It has implications for CAID, the database that, of course, the police use. So there's lots of various issues here. And also, too, in terms of child sexual abuse material, the fact that there are discussions taking place on various forums as well, where this is openly discussed. Tools are recommended amongst that particular community. And of course, like I say, there could be wider implications here for sexual offending. Just to give you an example of some of the discussions that do take place on the forums, I have redacted the names of the tools for the purpose of this webinar, and these quotes are taken verbatim. So you can see there is or was one called. I say is or was because apparently its creator had some sort of drama involving a lost laptop and deleted it from GitHub. So there you can see that individuals are almost trying to educate other users on various tools that could be used for malintent. Another quotation says the best solution is a particular form of AI and a particular form of tool. The AI automatically detects censor bars and mosaics while the tool decensors them. You'll need to download the tool off of Mega or a fork since the original repo was deleted. Here's a good tutorial on how to get it set up. And that user then gives the full URL for the GitHub link. Another user talks about text-generated AI, and this person says they get into novel AI, and holy woe, is it amazing for writing smut. This is a story that has been floating around in my head for years, and I'm glad to get it out regardless of the methods. And this user then goes on to write a story about a particular fantasy that he has on this particular web forum. And of course, you know, he really applauds AI for helping him to actually put that down on this particular forum section. Another area to consider with AI is chatbots. And of course, whenever we think of chatbots or text, ChatGPT is probably the most common that everyone here listening has heard of. ChatGPT does have built-in protection for any nefarious prompts, as you can see on the screen. So if you want to write something that is quite nefarious, sexualized, or in any way malicious, ChatGPT will simply say that it can't assist with that. However, other rogue GPTs do exist. Equally not safe for work, AI writer tools also exist, and they've come really more to the fore in recent months. There are a number on the screen: Pseudo-Write, My Tales Erotica, Novel AI, AI Dungeon, for example. These all offer quite unique features for creating explicit content very quickly and also effectively. There's also tools out there to create AI girlfriends to go with the text also. This then helps users generate quite diverse narratives and characters tailored very much toward the adult industry. And again, there could be wider implications for that for society as well in terms of people's personal preferences. There's also potential implications for modern slavery and human trafficking, in particular sexual exploitation, where, for example, users on platforms will use some of the not safe for work AI writer tools to describe sexual services, for example, in a language that is particularly effective. So, for example, it'll be more difficult to distinguish between a foreign writer and an English writer, a male writer and a female writer. So that also could have implications going forward. I'd mentioned briefly some rogue GBTs that do exist. One of these is called Worm GBT, and this is in particular used to commit fraud. So if we look at the rise of malicious large language models, what we usually find here is that these are coders, a community of coders who are quite well educated. They generally would be behind these, so they can work around, if you like, the safety features that the likes of ChatGPT will have built in. One such example of this rogue GBT is called Worm GBT. Initially, it was sold on hack forums. The licenses, as you can see, range from anywhere between €500 to €5,000. Usually you will find these also advertised now on Telegram, and the screen grabs on the screen have come directly from Telegram advertisements. If we think about fraud and how text can be used to commit fraud, and we think in particular around phishing emails, and whilst we are now quite well versed in looking for spelling and grammatical errors, with the likes of these rogue GBTs, they have been eroded. And as you can see, a comment from a business email compromise text reads that Worm GBT produced an email that was not only remarkably persuasive, but also strategically cunning, showcasing its potential for sophisticated phishing. So again, that can put users at risk, whether it be businesses or individuals, if we think about the large-scale nature of fraud that we also have in society today. Finally, then, if we think around artificial intelligence and voice, again, many of you will have seen the YouTube clips around Morgan Freeman, where it's not Morgan Freeman, but essentially his voice has been cloned as well as his image, but it's not actually him speaking. Other examples, various celebrities, Martin Lewis being one, it's very well known that he too has had his voice and image cloned, again, to persuade others to invest in fraudulent cryptocurrency scams, to name but one. So AI and voice is becoming particularly problematic, and actually voice cloning too has become very sophisticated in the recent past, and it's definitely something to look for as we go forward this year as well. You can see there were some claims last year that fraudsters only need 3 seconds on a cold call to clone your voice. It may be a little bit more to get exact accuracy depending on the technology, but we're still not talking anything significant. Anywhere between 10 and 15 seconds also is quite common. Equally, clips where someone has spoken online, they can easily, of course, be cloned as well. And again, like I said, something to really look out for this year. It's such an issue that OpenAI has released voice cloning tool over fears of misuse for election years in both the UK and the US. And that in itself shows the anxiety, if you like, that can occur around such tools. And just to give you a bit of an example then around voice cloning.
This is what an AI-generated voice sounds like. Pretty real, eh? Even more real when it is the voice of someone you know, family or close friend. What would you do if you received a WhatsApp voice note asking for urgent help from this person? Would you act? Would you think it might not be them? It is a tricky one. I am sure you'll agree.
And this is what has happened in the past, and again, the very recent past. So you may have received a WhatsApp message to say that your son or daughter, for example, has lost their phone. Can you send money to help them, get a new phone, for example? But now it's the voice of the son or the daughter that has been cloned and asking that particular parent for help. And that's, of course, much more convincing, and of course opens up a whole different issue for fraud as well. So like I say, this is an area that we really have to consider for this year. In terms of the latest trends and developments, to kind of summarize where we are, I don't expect you to be able to read this particular screen, but suffice to say, every hour of the day, there is an update, there is a news piece, there's some kind of advertising around AI and how Apple or how Meta or even how X are becoming more heavily involved within AI, and various tools, of course, that are being created as well. So like I say, for this year, AI is not going to go away anytime soon. And if anything, we're just seeing tools being increasingly more sophisticated and more streamlined and trained on significantly more models as well, which of course then will help with their development. That's not to say, of course, it's all negative. We need AI within our workplaces, regardless of where that may be. AI helps us with huge data sets. It can really save the human from going through thousands and thousands and thousands of pages of witness statements, for example, or spreadsheets of transactions. So it can actually save the human going through that. And of course, it can be used for good. We're also finding now that AI not only will give you an answer to a question, but it will also tell you how it reached that answer to try and, if you like, build trust within AI itself and how it does reach those decisions. So it's not all negative, but one thing it is incredibly fast moving. And these latest trends and developments will probably be outdated within a couple of days, probably, as is the nature of artificial intelligence. So thank you so much for listening. And of course, we can open the floor then for any questions. Thank you.